How long have you been in Singapore?
Almost 23 years.
Since 1999. About 2 years.
Since we born.
10 years.
All my life, 23 years. Yeah.
I've been here 6.5 years.
I was born here.
34 years?
12 years.
8 years.
Do you think racism exists in Singapore?
Yeah, I do. It's unlike other countries. It's more subtle.
Yeah.
There is actually.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah, yes it does.
Slightly.
Maybe?
Somewhere, I think it exists everywhere.
Not blatantly, maybe thinly veiled. I mean, there will be some hint of it, but it's not super.
Not much of a racism here relative to some countries.
Why would you say that?
There's definitely a lot of intervention on the government level to make sure there's harmony and mixing, in the housing and the schools. And there is definitely an overarching tone that racism will not be tolerated, which is great. But I think there's definitely one segment of society which is more prosperous economically, and there are others which are not. So, you tend to stereotype and you tend to associate certain characteristics with like the more affluent segment of the society versus the lesser ones.
That's where people have this tendency of I don't like to be mixing around with this group of race or because they are dead.
Chinese here is a bit privileged lah. So cause they can get a leeway sentence from like all the rules and everything. Like let's say if a Malay and a Chinese do the crime, right? Basically I feel like that they have a lenient sentence to the Chinese rather than the Malay. Like Chinese, right, have a higher chance of going to uni and any other stuff also in Singapore. They have a better chance of getting a house and a better job. Doing interview for a job, they basically ask, are you a Chinese or can you speak Chinese? Because it's very important in Singapore as there's a lot of people that use Chinese language.
When you're finding a room for rental, yeah, some of them might prefer Chinese. Yeah.
There's a lot of racism around where people start thinking about this black people.
Like minority races in Singapore, like for example Indians, like they will have a lot of like it may be jokes between friends, but their skin color, they will be made fun of, like the different look that they have and all that. So I think it's like kind of racist. I don't think I can recount like very strong experiences because I have not really gone through it myself. Because maybe I look like one of the, majority. Yeah.
From a very young age, we're like taught to keep it under wraps. As a result, most Singaporeans don't know how to have discussions about race. I think racism happens on the daily here, and even victims of it don't really know how to deal with it.
There's definitely a minority few that express certain racism traits, like superior to one race, individually. But as a society, I don't think so.
More or less, you like to make fun of other races. I think that's part and parcel of your. I think it's how people interact as well. Like when they feel that you are friend, they don't mind joking. But I think they don't mean much harm, but people may take it in a different way.
Has anything racist ever happened to you or anybody you know?
I do look Malay. I mean, they don't really expect you to, for example, there's like some stigma around it that you might be lazy or you can't really be at the top. You can't really go to go far in your career and things like that. So, and there's not many people that are Malay are in the leading positions and things like that. So that might be some stigma. So.
Oh yeah, a few things, as a Indian or as a person who just has dark skin, you're called many things growing up. Darky or blackie, or there's so many things, and very words that are just not politically correct at all. And so yeah, it's disgusting, and as a kid I did not know how to respond to it except just laugh it off. I've gotten older, the trauma kind of crept up on me, and you feel the brunt of it much later once you reflect.
Back then when we were little, we didn't know it was wrong. During recess, we play soccer. We just keep it as Chinese versus Malay. Because when we were younger, we really didn't care about this much. But as we grow older, we know that is something wrong. Because we don't want the two sides to be segregated.
I used to date someone who was not of the same race. People around, I think they have the idea like, how everyone, why must you date a Malay?
I think because of my skin. Yeah, because I'm actually Chinese, but because of my darker.
Insulting other race. There's also like Chinese people like insulting those Indian foreigners people. From, okay, for example, like countries like Philippines, Myanmar, Indonesia, right? I think the most racist thing that could happen is like when people call you like mate or something. Maybe job applications, like for example, they will put like Chinese only, or those people who can speak Chinese. So I can't speak Chinese. So even if I can speak English fluently, and although it is the common language here, I won't be able to get certain opportunities because I don't know how to speak Chinese.
No, not here. I mean, yeah, sorry. So I don't get to get. So, I mean, a lot of landlords would refuse to show me houses before I even like. So I think that's just, it's so common that it doesn't even occur to me now. But it's like they find out what race you are and then they'll say we can't show you the house. So that's very common.
That's happened more to me or my friends who have, you know, dark skin or are just not the.
I think no, not really.
What are some racial stereotypes anyone ever said to you? Or about you?
A lot of Malays goes to this school and saying that we don't have academic studies or the smarts to go to a normal poly school. Then basically like they think that we have no future. We end up like working as a garbage man or a sweeper.
Well, people may see like, oh, Malays, they are pretty much lazy, they live on installments or things like that. Then Chinese are arrogant, you know. Then we call like names for people like Ane, you know.
My food will stink a lot. And I think that stinks up, like they think it stinks up the house, but
That's minor, right?
that's minor, but people don't show you the houses when you want to rent or buy, which is when you want to rent, which is irritating. I mean, if you're an expat, I'm an expat,
Yeah.
so the assumption is that you don't listen to the laws and that you spend too much money, or you have more income than Singaporean.
Always have to eat rice or noodles, this kind of stereotype. And I think it's a small stereotype.
I guess some of them think that Malay are not well-to-do. They are mostly judged as a negative people. Malay is everyone from Malay family is always a broken family. Because even my teacher said that to me. I tried to get a house for rental, right? But I'm not sure, is it because of my background or something? It's very hard for me to get compared to others.
I'm Russian, so I must love vodka and drink vodka for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Have you ever said or done anything racist, even just a little bit?
And for maybe the thought of like, Chinese always get the priority.
It's not that I do or say anything racist. I always think racist because I was like brought up to this. Anything that happened to them, I always think that is a bad side. Like I didn't know what happened on their perspective.
For me, it's like some of the roommates from other races is like it's not clean or what. So you have this experience that make you think about racism lah.
I just gotta be honest, I did like a bit only, just kind of like a joke between us.
Probably, you know, I think everyone inherently is a little racist. You know, everyone has their prejudices. But I don't think I've gone out of my way to make someone feel less than themselves.
You know, I'm sure I have. Because I think it's a learning curve, right? Like you keep learning, oh, this was something that you said is actually racist. Also, this thing that you think is actually like hurtful to that community. I'm sure I have, but I can't remember anything.
Try not to dwell so much into a particular race, so I try to talk broadly.
Maybe at times I may do something, but I myself may not be conscious about. So
Yeah, of course. Well, I used to live, for example, in like Little India. Sometimes I mean, like, I get annoyed if people are crowding over. I mean, like on Sunday there will be like a lot of migrant workers and things like that. I get inconvenienced and things like that. So I might have said something wrong, but yeah, not super. I would like to think it's not super racist, but maybe I did something wrong. But yeah.
Do you agree with the current regulation where you have to state your race in every document, including your ID?
It's not a big deal for me. It's just that it's minor. Yeah.
we don't agree to that.
Actually, never think about it. It's a good question to really think about it. I cannot.
That makes sense.
Why is important, right? It shouldn't matter. So I mean, there's no reason to have it reflected on your identification cards.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think my kids at taekwondo class I have to write like which race. If I'm getting any kind of membership, like my race should not make a difference.
I think that's normal.
Even without putting down the race, by writing down your name, people will sort of guess what race you are. So to me, it doesn't make a big difference.
I don't see the point for me exactly. Maybe sometimes it can get confusing for some people. For example, if you're mixed, which one do you put? Things like that. So sometimes you don't want to classify yourself as just one. Because like maybe I'm a Chinese, but I feel like more Indian inside. I don't know, things like that. It might be inconvenient for some people, but I don't think it's like massive.
Do you agree with the current regulation about the racial housing quota?
So I think it's okay. But if it gets to a point where like the majority gets like all the privileges and benefits, then I think it's not okay. Because like if Singapore is a multiracial country, then everybody should be able to get like equal opportunities. That's why I get why the government does it.
Sort of agree, but at the same time it's a bit unfair. Because like in Singapore there's a lot of Chinese people, like 70% of the population is Chinese, right? And the rest is mixed up. So when they think of the HDB, they give it more to 70% of it for higher chance for Chinese, right? It's a bit of understanding, but at the same time, then there's a low chance of you getting the house.
A little bit more complicated because it might help minority groups get housing, it ensures that. But I know that it in turn doesn't really help them when they're trying to sell off their property because they can only sell it off to another member of their own race. So yeah, in that sense, I don't think it's very good.
And it's to reflect the current proportion in Singapore. So I think, and what the government do is also not for racism. I think it's more for the balance and also to ensure that every neighborhood has all the races. Yeah, I hope people don't take it wrongly. Maybe
It's more to foster the interaction between races. So having that quota, I actually see a benefit rather than a negative connotation to that. Yeah, so it allows like even mix of people in a community.
I mean, the quota is meant to be like, so it's probably for diversity.
But sometimes Singapore trying to avoid like same race living in same area we try to avoid kind of clusters of one race. So this is maybe why it's important for Singapore. We try to spread all nationality to avoid this kind of race clusters. I can see that actually in Singapore doing it quite well.
If you could rank all the races from the one who has the most privileges to the one who has the least, how would that be?
Chinese at the top, Malay then Indian.
Europeans? Yeah. And then third will be Chinese. And then I think moving down to Malay, Indian, foreign workers. Yeah.
Chinese,
Then Malay, then
Indian, then the others Eurasian people.
Okay, I think Singapore citizens get the most privilege, but out of them, the most privileged one would be Chinese, because they are the majority. So then after that, maybe like after Chinese, I think Malay and Indian. White, I think they will rank above. Maybe second after Chinese, below Singaporeans. Yeah, but above other Asian races.
Chinese obviously benefit the most. I would just generally say the darker your skin, the less likely you are gonna have access to privilege.
Chinese, then Caucasians, I think, then perhaps Malay, and then South Indians.
but somehow I feel that even Eurasian being minority, they are holding some very high rank posts or behaving very high class still. So and Singapore is accepting to all the race, whether it's minority or majority. As you can see, even minority also behave like so high, right?
I think Chinese being the majority, so probably like you have, I don't know, some hidden acceptance. Malay typically is more, I would say it's a more native race to begin with. So our national language actually is Malay. And I think they have some privilege in terms of their schooling. They are heavily subsidized as compared to other races, or even free, I can't remember. Yeah. So then followed by the rest of the minorities like Indians and others.
I can say that there is stereotypes that Angmos has a better life, but I'm Angmo and I think I have a same same level of life as all Singaporeans.
So maybe the Chinese, maybe then the Indian, and the Malay. I mean, Indian and Malay is it's pretty much the same. I think they go through the same issues. And maybe at the bottom part there will be like the migrant workers and things like that. Western, Caucasian expats, then you'll be at like the top, even more than the Chinese. Because you maybe still have some sort of inferiority complex.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank the racial inequality in Singapore?
Okay, I wouldn't say it's perfect or very good. So I would maybe give.
Let's say 2 to 3 lah.
Maybe like 4.
3 or 4?
I think 2.
2 or 3. Yeah, correct.
0 to 3.
Definitely 2 to 3.
2 or 3?
3 or 2?
5?
5.
You guys agree with 5?
5, yeah.
Even though there's like this racism feeling in our mind, right? For every other Singaporean, we don't act upon conflict. We just live our life. So
It's still bad, but it's not that bad. So
I think everybody still has a lot of opportunity here.